Deborah is one of the most extraordinary figures in biblical history, known for her wisdom, courage, and leadership in a time of great oppression. Her story is found in the book of Judges, specifically in chapters 4 and 5, which offers deep insights into divine authority, human action, and the role of women in leadership during a critical period in Israel's history. Deborah stands out as both a judge and a prophetess, a combination that placed her in a unique position of spiritual and political authority during a time of national turmoil for Israel. As a rare female leader in a patriarchal society, her life demonstrates that God can use anyone, regardless of gender or social expectations, to fulfill his purposes. During the time of Deborah, Israel was going through a cyclical history of sin, oppression, repentance, and deliverance. This period followed the death of Joshua, when there was no centralized leadership, leaving the Israelites vulnerable to foreign influences. The book of Judges details the moral and spiritual decay that plagued Israel during this era, as the people frequently turned away from the Lord, worshiping foreignly cord. In response to their disobedience, God allowed them to fall under the oppression of neighboring nations as a consequence of their actions. At the time of Deborah's leadership, Israel was suffering under the oppressive rule of Jabin, king of Canaan, whose military commander, Sisera, had terrorized the Israelites for 20 years. Sisera's army was equipped with 900 iron chariots, a fearsome symbol of Canaanite dominance. For 2 decades, the Israelites had endured brutal oppression under Sisera's rule. Their situation became so dire that they cried out to God for deliverance, and it was in this desperate context that Deborah rose to prominence as a judge and leader. Deborah's role as a judge was significant not only because she was a woman, but because of the nature of the office she held. In ancient Israel, judges were both legal and spiritual leaders. They were responsible for settling disputes among the people, but their role extended far beyond judicial matters. As a judge, Deborah offered moral and spiritual guidance, steering the Israelites back to the ways of God. This dual responsibility placed her in a position of immense influence, as her judgments carried both legal and divine authority. People from all over Israel came to Deborah to have their disputes settled, and she judged them under a palm tree between Ramah and Bethel, a location symbolic of her leadership and wisdom in delivering justice. But Deborah was not only a judge, she was also a prophetess, which further enhanced her authority. In ancient Israel, prophets were seen as the mouthpieces of God, individuals who received direct communication from him. Prophets did not merely foretell future events, but they also provided divine guidance for the present. Deborah's prophetic gift made her a spiritual guide for the Israelites, and her leadership was deeply rooted in her connection with God. This connection set her apart from other judges, as she was not only a political or military leader but also a conduit of divine will. It was through Deborah that God communicated his plan to deliver Israel from the oppression of Sisera and his iron chariots. At a pivotal moment in her leadership, Deborah summoned Barak, a military leader from the tribe of Naphtali, to deliver a direct command from God. She instructed Barak to gather an army of 10,000 men from the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun and lead them to Mount Tabor. There, God promised to deliver Sisera and his army into Barak's hands. Barak's response to Deborah's command is telling of his respect for her spiritual authority. Rather than immediately agreeing to lead the army, Barak hesitated and insisted that Deborah accompany him into battle. This hesitation reflects Barak's recognition of Deborah's spiritual significance. He understood that her presence would ensure God's favor in the battle. Deborah agreed to go with Barak, but she made it clear that the glory of the victory would not go to him. Instead, she prophesied that the honor of defeating Sisera would go to a woman. This prophecy would later be fulfilled in an unexpected way, but for now, Deborah and Barak prepared for the impending battle. Together, they led the Israelite forces to Mount Tabor, where they awaited the arrival of Sisera's army. As the battle unfolded, God's intervention became evident. Sisera's army, with its 900 iron chariots, appeared invincible. However, as Deborah had prophesied, the forces of nature played a crucial role in Israel's deliverance. The Kishon River, which ran near the battlefield, suddenly overflowed, turning the ground into a muddy quagmire. Sisera's chariots, which had been his greatest military advantage, became trapped in the mud, rendering them useless. This dramatic reversal of fortune allowed the Israelite army to gain the upper hand, and they pursued the Canaanites with renewed vigor. Sisera, seeing that the battle was lost, abandoned his chariot and fled on foot. His flight was not out of cowardice, but rather a strategic attempt to escape and regroup. However, his escape led him to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. Jael welcomed Sisera into her tent and offered him food and drink, creating a false sense of security. Exhausted from the battle, Sisera fell into a deep sleep, trusting that Jael's hospitality would protect him. But Jael, in a bold and unexpected move, took a tent peg and a hammer and drove the peg through Sisera's temple, killing him instantly. Jael's act of courage fulfilled Deborah's prophecy that a woman would claim the glory of the victory. While Barak had led the army to military success, it was Jael who delivered the final blow, ensuring Sisera's defeat and Israel's deliverance from Canaanite oppression. When Barak arrived at Jael's tent, she showed him the lifeless body of Sisera, with the tent peg still lodged in his head. With Sisera's death, the Canaanite oppression was broken, and Israel was free from the tyranny of Jabin. Following the victory, Deborah and Barak led the Israelites in a song of praise to God. This song, known as the Song of Deborah, is one of the oldest pieces of biblical literature and offers a detailed account of the battle, God's intervention, and the courage of those who fought. The song is both a celebration of victory and a theological reflection on God's deliverance. Deborah's song praises God for his role in the victory, emphasizing that it was his power, not merely human effort, that secured the triumph. The imagery in the song is vivid and poetic, describing how the stars fought from heaven and how the river Kishon swept Sisera's army away. The Song of Deborah also highlights the participation or lack thereof of various tribes in the battle. The tribes of Zebulun and Naphtali are praised for their bravery, while other tribes are criticized for their reluctance to join the fight. This critique reflects the fragmented nature of Israel during the time of the Judges, when tribal loyalty often outweighed national unity. Deborah's leadership was instrumental in uniting the tribes for a common cause, but her song serves as a reminder that not all of Israel responded to the call to arms. One of the most poignant moments in the Song of Deborah is the reflection on Sisera's mother, who is depicted waiting at the window for her son's return. Unaware of his death, Sisera's mother imagines that her son is delayed because he is dividing the spoils of war. This moment of tragic irony underscores the human cost of warfare, even for the enemies of Israel. While the song celebrates the defeat of Sisera, it also acknowledges the grief of those left behind, adding a layer of complexity to the celebration of victory. Deborah's story has far-reaching implications, not only for her time but for the broader narrative of Israel's history and theology. Her leadership challenged traditional gender roles, demonstrating that God's calling transcends societal expectations. In a time when women were rarely seen in positions of power, Deborah's role as a judge and prophetess set her apart as a unique figure in biblical history. Her example paved the way for other women in the Bible, such as Miriam, Huldah, and Esther, who also played significant roles in God's plan for his people. Deborah's story emphasizes the importance of faith and obedience. Her willingness to step into a leadership role during a time of national crisis is a testament to her faith in God's promises. She did not seek power for personal gain. Instead, she responded to God's call and served her people with humility and strength. Her leadership was not about ambition, but about fulfilling God's purpose for Israel. Her story teaches that leadership is about service, faith, and obedience to God's direction. The partnership between Deborah and Barak is also significant. Their relationship illustrates the balance between divine instruction and human action. Deborah, as God's prophetess, provided the divine directive, but it was Barak who carried out the mission. This dynamic between spiritual guidance and military leadership highlights the interplay of faith and action in achieving God's purposes. Barak's hesitation to go into battle without Deborah's presence underscores the importance of spiritual authority in the conflict. His reliance on Deborah's leadership reflects his understanding that the battle was not just a military endeavor but a spiritual one as well. Deborah's legacy extends far beyond her time as a judge. Her story has inspired countless generations of believers, both men and women, to step into their God-given roles with courage and faith. In later Jewish tradition, she is remembered as one of the 7 prophetesses of Israel, alongside figures like Miriam and Esther. Her story is also a reminder that God's deliverance often comes through unexpected means. Whether it is a female judge, a hesitant military leader, or a Kenite woman with a tent peg, God's ways are not our ways. He uses the unlikely and the overlooked to accomplish His purposes, demonstrating His sovereignty and grace. The significance of Deborah's story lies in its multifaceted nature. It is a tale of military victory, but it is also a story of faith, leadership, and divine intervention. Deborah's role as a judge and prophetess shows that true leadership is not about wielding power but about serving God and His people with integrity and humility. Her ability to unite the tribes of Israel, inspire courage in Barak, and lead her people to victory speaks to the depth of her character and the strength of her faith. Deborah's song, which celebrates the victory over Sisera, is a fitting conclusion to her story. It is not just a song of triumph, but a reminder that the ultimate victory belongs to God. In her song, Deborah acknowledges that it was God who fought for Israel, and it is His power that delivered them from their enemies. This emphasis on divine intervention reinforces the theological themes of the story, reminding the reader that human efforts, while important, are ultimately secondary to God's will. Deborah's story transcends its immediate historical context, serving as an enduring lesson about the transformative power of faith and the importance of spiritual leadership. Her narrative does not merely focus on the political or military aspects of her role, but rather on how divine calling can shape the destiny of a nation. Deborah's example illustrates that leadership in God's kingdom is not bound by societal norms or expectations. Her courage to step into the role that God ordained for her despite the odds exemplifies the resilience in us. Furthermore, Deborah's narrative is a powerful testament to the pivotal role of women in God's plan. In a patriarchal society where women were often relegated to the background, Deborah's rise to leadership challenges these boundaries and underscores the message that God's call is not restricted by gender. Through her, we see that true authority comes from alignment with divine purpose rather than from traditional structures of power. Her wisdom, decisiveness, and faithfulness shaped the course of Israel's history at a critical time, showing that leadership is about serving with conviction and responding to the needs of the people, even in the most difficult. Beyond the battlefield and beyond the courts where she rendered justice, Deborah's legacy is a deeply spiritual one. Her unwavering reliance on God's guidance in every decision highlights a key biblical principle: human success and security come not from our abilities or strategies, but from seeking and trusting God's will. In the face of overwhelming military force, Deborah's leadership demonstrates that God's plans always prevail when they are faithfully followed. It is not just the courage of one woman that brings about victory, but the profound trust in the God who commands history itself. Deborah's story also teaches us the value of collaboration. Her partnership with Barak exemplifies how God often brings together different individuals to achieve His purposes. Each had a role to play, Deborah providing the prophetic guidance and Barak executing the military action, illustrating that God's work often involves multiple people, each contributing their strengths. The story shows that while leadership may come from one source, the victory is communal, involving those who are willing to step up and follow God's direction. Jael's role in the defeat of Sisera further enhances this theme of unlikely heroes in God's grand narrative. A woman of humble status, she takes down a mighty commander, proving that God often uses the unexpected and overlooked to bring about His justice. Jael's actions, alongside Deborah's and Barak's, culminate in the complete overthrow of Israel's enemies, showing that in God's economy, no one is too small or insignificant to play a part in His plans. Theologically, Deborah's story invites reflection on the theme of divine justice. The oppressive regime of Jabin and Sisera represents the forces of evil and chaos that threaten God's people. Deborah's rise as a judge and prophetess represents God's response to this evil, as He raises up a deliverer who will bring righteousness and peace back to His people. This pattern of deliverance is echoed throughout the Bible, From Moses leading the Israelites out of Egypt to Jesus' ultimate victory over sin and death. In many ways, Deborah's story prefigures this larger biblical narrative, reminding readers that God is always at work to bring about His justice, often in surprising and unexpected ways. As future generations of Israel look back on Deborah's time, her story would serve as a beacon of hope and inspiration. It is a narrative that would have resonated particularly with those who found themselves in difficult circumstances, oppressed by forces beyond their control. Deborah's example showed that no matter how bleak the situation may seem, God's deliverance is always near for those who remain faithful. Her leadership left an indelible mark on the collective consciousness of Israel, symbolizing what can be achieved when leaders act with integrity, courage, and faith. In modern times, Deborah's story continues to inspire countless individuals who find themselves called to lead in challenging circumstances. Her example encourages believers to seek God's guidance in every decision, to trust in His plans, and to act with courage even when the odds seem insurmountable. Deborah's life reminds us that God equips those He calls, and that true leadership is characterized by humility, obedience, and a deep reliance on divine wisdom. Ultimately, Deborah's life and legacy point us toward the power of faith to transform not only individual lives but entire communities and nations. Her leadership broke the cycle of oppression for Israel, offering a moment of peace and restoration. In the same way, her story invites each of us to consider how we might step into our own roles, responding to God's call with boldness and faith, and trusting that He will guide us through the challenges ahead. Deborah's life is a testament to what happens when we align our actions with God's purposes, serving as an enduring example of faith, leadership, and divine justice.